Hey, it's Brock here with Rock Hill Farms, and today I want to talk about what it really means to be prepared. Because I would never call myself a prepper, but I spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about what it means to be prepared. And after deciding to make this video, I decided I should also do all my research on what other people consider prepping or being prepared. So I've dove pretty deep into the prepper YouTube community, watching all the videos I can find on being prepared, prepping. And I think there's a lot of good things to learn from the prepping community. There were some fantastic content creators putting out good stuff. But I also think that a lot of the videos I watched missed what is to me the most important aspect of being prepared. I also watched some documentaries. I watched a 60-minute episodes on the realities of like serious apocalyptic type of catastrophes that could come down and destroy society as we know it. And, you know, I don't think I'll ever spend a lot of time worrying about any of those scenarios. I think I want to focus more of my life on enjoying the blessings I have. But I definitely think that it's undoubtable that being prepared is better than not being prepared. So let's talk about what it means to be prepared. The term prepper is kind of put out there as like the most extreme of the extreme, who spends their whole life building bunkers and storing up all this food so that in the zombie apocalypse they can survive for 6 months longer than everybody else. And I would say, it's good to have some preparations for absolute disaster. But I think what's more important to me is being prepared for the realities of everyday life. Things that are actually going to happen to us at some point. So in my life, I'm 44 years old, I've seen some situations that would have been great to be prepared for, and at those times, I was not prepared for those situations. Those include it was over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, we had an ice storm where we were without power for 11 days. And we had no preparation at all. We had no way to heat water. We were we lived through it. And there were people who let us come to their house and, wash clothes and take showers, and people who had generators and who had basic preparations, or who lived in areas where their power came back on sooner. We utilized a few different options, but it was a rough period of time. I've also, I live in Kansas. They call this Tornado Alley. I've been on site on the location immediately after 4 different tornadoes. And I've helped a little bit with some cleanup. I've seen it up close and personal. I've had a lot of family members who lost their houses to fires. We all saw the COVID pandemic, and you think, what if that had been 5 times more deadly than it was? What would have happened in society? There would have been some real breakdowns in some areas where it would have been good to be prepared. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the things I learned from that 60 Minutes documentary. I want to talk about real preparation for some cataclysmic events. But I also want to talk about what I think a lot of the preppers miss out on, and that is just being prepared for an average day tomorrow. And I've talked about this before, that, I am in the age group, and I'm a property owner, and I'm able-bodied. And I think it's my responsibility, or what I take pride in, personally, is how many people can I be responsible for? Because it's kind of selfish to mind your own business in a way. To say, I'm going to take care of me, and everybody else is on their own. So, once you're a parent, you're responsible for your children. But you can also be responsible for your neighbors, your parents, your children, your grandchildren, your wife, the young, the elderly. being able to help other people who aren't prepared is a big thing. And I'm not, once again, talking about the zombie apocalypse here. I'm saying I can get a call because I'm in a situation, and I put myself in life in a situation where most of the time I have a choice about how I spend my time, and I have a certain amount of resources in terms of tools, equipment, and knowledge that I can solve problems for other people. So being a prepper on the most basic level to me means that if someone calls, they say, "Hey Dad, I have a flat tire." That's not a panic for me. We don't have to call and pay someone. I can solve your problem. It's about knowing how to basically do things that, solving problems that are going to happen. Flat tires are going to happen. So having a portable air compressor, having a good floor jack, having a trailer that can haul a vehicle. My truck has a high towing capacity. I have a vehicle hauling trailer. I put a winch on the front of my truck. So if it's bad weather and like serious ice storm and everybody's going off the road, I can pull you out of the ditch. You know, in times like that, the wrecker services are overwhelmed. They can't get out there to everybody. There could be situations where having that winch really is life-changing to someone. Now, I've had it on there a couple years. Mainly, I pull trees over with it when I'm worried about the lean and that tree could fall on something. That's the main thing I've used it for. But being prepared means having the tools, knowledge, and ability to solve a problem. So I focus a lot on being prepared for every day. So let's look at some other examples of that. So these are simple things. This is a Gerber tool. It's kind of it's not even a high-end multi-tool, but this has a knife and some screwdriver blades and a little pair of scissors and some pliers, needle nose pliers, things like that. If a radiator hose comes off, some kind of small problem like that, I might be able to solve it with this. It cost me $40 one time to always have this in my pocket. Although I will say I have a tendency to lose things and leave it setting somewhere and have to buy another one, but those are kind of things that are being prepared. And it's not radical. I'm not a conspiracy theorist because I keep a pocket knife on me. Another good one is a first aid kit. Now, you can go to Walmart and pretty cheap you can buy a first aid kit. I think it's pretty useless, really. Most of the first aid kits that are pre-prepared that you buy will have Band-Aids and antibiotic ointment and some things like that in it that will make you feel better if you're 7 years old and you've scraped your knee. If I cut my finger, but I don't cut it off, whether or not I have Band-Aids with me does not make a big difference. Right? Who cares? I can always go home and wash it out and put a Band-Aid on it. But something like this can save your life. This is called bleed stop. Stops bleeding in seconds. So if I'm in a serious car accident and I've halfway cut my arm off or something like that, having a belt with the belt holes going all the way around that you can make a tourniquet out of, having a box of bleed stop and a little bit of CPR or first aid training, save your life, save somebody else's life. And I've been thinking about, I need to do a better job of learning more of that. And so that's where I think the value in those types of videos comes from. But it's not that hard to put together a real first aid kit. You know, buy a little toolbox and then go pick out individual things that you think really matter in a dangerous situation and put them in your vehicle. Now, I did a video a while back, I think it was over a year ago, that's become really popular on the channel. It's called Everyday Carry for Your Truck. And in that, I built a box, and I'm not going to repeat every bit of it. I'll put a link in the video description where you can check out that video. But I put together a truck box, pretty good sized box, and it had tow rope, it had a basic tool kit, had like a flashlight, like there was a whole list of things that everybody I think should have in their truck at all times to be prepared for an emergency situation. And I think every vehicle, every workshop, every place you can be should have a thoughtful, everyday carry setup. First aid, pair of pliers, whatever the situation dictates. And all that takes, it's not going to cost you a lot of money. What it's going to cost you is taking the time to think about it. So that means, do you have a fire extinguisher in your shop? Do you have fire extinguishers in your house? If your kids are old enough to be in this conversation, do they know how to use the fire extinguisher? Do you have smoke alarms? What about smoke alarms that are tied into an app that will tell you that your house is on fire when you're not home? That, to me, is being prepared. Having a wood stove is being prepared. It doesn't really matter if this shop is heated or not. Like, I want it heated. I've had a bunch of conversations about why I keep it heated and spend the money on heating a shop that I do spend quite a bit of time out here, but regardless, this is not emergency preparedness that my shop is heated. But what if we went 11 days without electricity right now? Well, I have some backup systems for the house that we'll talk about. But if we went 11 days without power, like we did 15 years ago, we could cook on this stove. Whether it's winter, even if it was summer, I could throw this door open and we could cook dinner on this stove, pots and pans out of the house. So having a wood stove, even if it's not in your home, having a wood stove is part of emergency preparedness. And another part of this is that whatever your emergency preparedness is, whatever your energy sources are going to be, you need to have those organized and you need to have fuel for them. So a wood stove is worthless without firewood. So I always have firewood. I never sell the last of my firewood. Now, I guess that takes me to talking about our house. So I did a video a while back where I got a generator that would power about half of the things in our house. And I set up a manual transfer switch. So if our power goes out, I can start the generator, plug the generator into the box, flip a switch, and half of the house will now have power again. So this is about taking care of other people as well as myself. If I was a hermit, I could just sit in the cold, I guess, and wait for the power to come back on. But somebody's got to be able to keep these babies warm. I've got 6 grandkids that are young. If we lost power for 11 days, then all of my kids that are at home and the ones that are adults could come home, bring their kids here, and we could have power as long as gas stations are open. We could have power and do all the basic things, and it would feel like we maintained a certain standard. And I didn't have that 15 years ago. And so that's being prepared. Now, I just mentioned gas stations being open. One area where I need to improve is I have fuel storage capability. But sometimes, I don't use as much gasoline, so I'll leave my gas storage empty. And you're not prepared because you have a generator, because if you need a generator, everybody else in your area probably also needs a generator. And who knows if the gas station has power? Like, being prepared isn't just having a generator, it's knowing that it works, starting it every once in a while, having fuel for it. It's the whole thing. So my generator is stored inside next to the transfer switch. I also have a generator out here, and I've got solar portable power stations. but I keep one generator inside, so it's protected from the weather. It's right there next to the cord, started a couple times a year, and always keep fuel on hand. Now the generator I have in there is from Champion, and it's a dual fuel generator. I'm talking about a lot of different things here. So in this video description, I'm going to put links to the videos where I set up the generator to run the whole house. I'm going to put a link to portable power station reviews and my everyday carry for the truck. I'm also going to put links for some of my favorite tools like this and the DeWalt tire inflator and this, where you can get these products on Amazon. And I want to take 20 seconds here to just mention something I never really talk about on the channel. But if you have a YouTuber that you enjoy watching and you want to help that person out without spending any money, buy things that you were already going to buy through that person's Amazon links. Because we do this, we make videos because we enjoy making videos, but we also, a lot of us are trying to earn a living or support our families with it. So I don't want you to buy one of these if you don't need one. But if you're already going to buy one, click my link and it helps me out. And if you order stuff from Amazon all the time, go to your favorite creator's channel, find one of their product links, and order your stuff after clicking their link, and the person who put that video out will get some revenue from it. Sorry for the little mini commercial in there, but sometimes I don't know if people realize that those links are helping the person who made the video. Something that I very rarely see talked about in prepping videos is your responsibility to maintain a certain level of physical fitness and stamina. Now, if you are 9 years old or 90 years old, then to a certain level, it's somebody else's responsibility to be, physically capable of doing the hard things. But, if you're a man between 20 and 60, then you need to be physically able to respond to a challenge. And if you follow my channel, you'll know that exactly a year ago, I weighed close to 300 pounds. And I could hardly do anything without getting out of breath. I was on high blood pressure medicine, and I was looking at myself and picturing where 10 more years of this would take me to a heart attack or a stroke. I had really high blood pressure. I couldn't do anything. And it made me think, especially as a relatively young man, to say, oh my gosh, there's a crisis. There's an emergency. There's a problem that needs solved. Say, okay, I'll take care of it. Let me grab my oxygen tank and how about you wheel me out there? And I'm not trying to talk down to anyone, like I said, who's elderly or who has some kind of a serious medical condition. We all deal with challenges, and sometimes you get a raw deal in life. But if it's within your grasp, then you have a responsibility to those around you to be physically capable of doing something. So, in addition to going on the carnivore diet and losing this weight, I really put a lot of work into getting myself back into decent physical shape. And I have a long way to go with that too. But my son, who was an athlete and has now graduated high school and he's no longer an athlete, he's been talking to me a little bit about some routines we can do together to stay in shape. But you can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself. And it goes beyond just there's an emergency situation, I need to be able to physically take action. It goes beyond that to, we just had the COVID pandemic, and everyone can have different opinions on that pandemic, but one thing we know for a fact is that you were more at risk if you were overweight, or you had diabetes, or you had high blood pressure, or you had all of these other things. Because some people, COVID was like a common cold. It was no big deal. They didn't even feel that bad for some people. And for other people, it was absolutely devastating and life-changing. I know someone who is a friend who lost several years of his life, barely survived, was in the hospital for a very long time. COVID for him was absolutely devastating. And you were more likely to be devastated if you weren't already in poor health. And I'm not talking specifically about that person. You know, I wish the best to everyone. But what I thought about from this experience we've had is being prepared for the next outbreak includes taking control of your own health. As we talk about first aid kits, I also think it's a good idea to have some medications on hand. And there are services out there where you can use like a telehealth system, over the phone, have a conversation with a medical professional, and they will prescribe you with antibiotics and some different medications that you can keep on hand. And some people may have a different opinion on that. I was actually approached by a company, and when I was approached, I was uninsured. And I was out of shape and overweight and uninsured and not in the best health. And I was approached by a company that could offer me like a range of antibiotics that I could keep on hand. So in a bad situation or whatever the case may be, I could be treated with something. And it was a sponsorship opportunity for the channel. And I wanted to do it, but I ended up turning it down. But I think those kind of resources are a good idea too. So to me, preparedness means thinking through things that can go wrong. And the more likely it is to go wrong, the more prepared you need to be. I know that our cars are going to have problems. I need to have a plan for dealing with that. I know that tornadoes happen in this area. I should have a plan in place. We need a tornado shelter. We have a basement that's half underground. It's acceptable, but I'm looking at tornado shelters because I've seen tornadoes firsthand. Same thing, I've been thinking about a fire plan. Everyone talks about smoke detectors and fire extinguishers. What if your house burns down while you're not here? Well, it's important to have insurance. That's being prepared so that you're taken care of long term. If your house burns down, you want to have enough insurance to rebuild or relocate or whatever you need to do. But also, what about that day? What about the next day? So I've got this shop that's 100 feet from my house, 150 feet from my house, and I've been thinking that we should have basic supplies on a shelf in this shop, so if the house burns down, while we're processing and dealing with everything, we can come out here and get some basic things that we need, everyday stuff. So now we've kind of covered what I think is underrepresented in the prepper community, and that's everyday preparedness. Now I want to give some of my thoughts on the stuff that's talked about more in the prepping community, and that is your major catastrophes. If there is a large terrorist attack that takes down our electrical grid, and we don't have cell phone communications, and we don't have electricity, people are scared that society will break down. And that could be true. And I think the closer you are to a city, the worse it will be. If you've got millions of people living in a small area, like what are people going to do? They don't have the ability really to be prepared. And I think it'll be less out here in the country, but I don't think it's bad to have some preparedness for that. And so for me, the things I think I'm going to focus on is we need to have a heat source. We need to have some type of electrical source. We need to have some fuel storage. And I've got most of this already in place. We need to have a lot of food. And stockpiling food is probably just always a good idea. I mean, we saw in COVID where shelves were empty. And COVID was not as devastating as the reaction to it. In terms of, a lot of people were affected by COVID, and I don't want to minimize that people lost their lives and had serious health reactions, but like some of the panic buying caused a problem. And if you're prepared, you don't have to run out and panic buy. So I'm not going to spend my life savings on a bunker system where we can survive the nuclear fallout, but having some beans and rice and some freeze-dried food and some drinkable water is a pretty good idea. You know, I've been thinking about some other things I want to do, about setting up some water purification, because water is the first thing. If you no longer have drinkable water coming out of your faucets, and I've kind of been wondering from my regular audience, you know, what do you guys think about this? How interested are you in this topic? And would you like to see some more videos on it? Because I've been thinking I might set up a water purification system, some rainwater collection, things like that. So let me know, do you think I'm crazy, or are you interested? If I do that stuff, do you want to see it? The conversation about preparing for like a post-apocalyptic total societal meltdown is an interesting conversation, and it kind of brings faith into it. So if you are a believer and you have faith in God that everything works within His plan, then there's kind of a tendency to say, you know, that's out of my control, you know, and there are scriptures about our reaction to that sort of thing. But I will say, I don't believe we're ever instructed to just sit on our hands. We're supposed to do our part. And I just would say that obsessing about it and worrying constantly about what if this and what if that isn't the best use of my time. I want to try to spend most of my time enjoying my life, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of preparedness. And I actually kind of skipped over something I wanted to talk about in between your everyday problems like a flat tire and society melting down. And that is being prepared to defend yourself from physical, immediate threat. And I think that if you're a rural property owner, you need to have some basic protection in terms of firearms and training on how to use them. So some guys just love guns. It's just a hobby. I'm obsessed with it. I've got all these different firearms. I'm not that guy. I mean, I'm not anti-gun. It's just not a hobby of mine. But I think it's a responsibility of mine if I consider myself as responsible for the people who live in my home and our extended family, and being a provider and a protector. It's my responsibility to be able to do that, to also protect from immediate physical threats. And that could mean a bear or a burglar or anything else. So I've never been someone who carried a firearm with me at all times. We own firearms, but I don't carry one. But I've really been giving some thought to that. When you see all these, you know, shootings that happen in public and things like that, I know some people think the solution is eliminate all guns, and obviously I feel strongly the other way. And I think most of these situations would be solved if there was someone who was armed and trained and brave on location, that most of these, you know, acts of violence could be stopped. And I'm thinking about, while that idea doesn't excite me, that I have some responsibility to be that person. So everyone has to make their own choices on things like that, but it's definitely something to think about, that you could go your whole life and never be in that situation, but if you ever are in that situation, it's too late to decide in that moment that you want to be the hero. You got to be prepared ahead of time to be the hero. So let's talk about food. Everyone immediately says get some beans and rice. Well, sure, beans and rice are cheap and they're shelf stable for a while. Go to the store and buy some beans and rice and some freeze-dried food packs and stuff like that. But if we're talking about some kind of a situation where a pandemic or a terrorist attack or something causes society to break down a little bit and food's not readily available at the grocery stores and we have serious problems, like packages of freeze-dried food for like 10 bucks a pack. You can get one person's little freeze-dried meal. To me, that's more show. That's not the reality of how, if society breaks down like that, we're going to need more than gimmicky stuff like that. It's okay to have it, but the reality of who's really going to still eat when society breaks down are the people who have real food growing on their property. And that means, knowing how to grow food, how to garden, how to farm, raising livestock. Those people are going to have food. Having a pond like mine that's stocked, like you want to invest a little bit of money into preparing for disaster, well, dig a pond and stock it full of fish, get some chickens. Now that's being prepared. It's being prepared for financial downturns and any number of different things. And I think it's, like I said at the beginning, it's always better to be prepared than not. Another big topic is communication. Every piece of information in the world seems to be at our fingertips, and we can talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. It doesn't take that much for our access to the internet and all these communication systems to break down. Probably one of the more likely scenarios that would disrupt society would be a breakdown in that communication system if they hacked into our cell phone or internet systems and we kind of went into a blackout of information. And I think it's a good idea to have a battery-powered AM/FM radio, or maybe even an old CB ham radio system. And those things aren't that expensive to get. So I think that's a definite good idea. Because the craziest thing is if we did have a situation and you don't know what's going on anywhere but your own property. So I think communication is something that's kind of underrated. And I also kind of think Starlink might be something that could be good to have. I'm wondering, it would depend. There's so many variables you never know. But I'm wondering if Starlink might stay active when everything else goes down. So I've talked a lot, and I've hit a lot of subjects, and there's a million things I've left out. But what I really want is for you guys to go in the comments and tell me what you think it means to be prepared. How important is it? What parts of this do you think are the most important? You think being prepared mainly means, the practical things, or are you someone who's really focused on being prepared for the zombie apocalypse? Let me know what you think. Let me know what I forgot. And just be thoughtful to have a plan for your basic everyday disasters. I don't have some grand point I was trying to make. I just occasionally like to share my thoughts with you guys on different subjects. Check out the links in the video description. I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.